Metal Jesus, and I'm back again, feeling a bit nostalgic over one of my favorite consoles. It's my first console I ever got as a kid, and that is the mighty Atari VCS or 2600. And I wanted to do a video about that console because I love it so much, but I thought, do I do the typical, top 10 list? I was thinking about it. It's like, well, you know what? One company created almost all of my favorite games for it, and that is Activision. Now, it's no surprise because Activision was created from Atari. A bunch of star programmers that created amazing games left to create Activision because they wanted to be more creative in their games. They wanted more control. They wanted more recognition. And I don't know about you, but I consider games to be an art form. And so these guys totally believe that. They went and just made some of the best games for the system. So I want to cover my top 10 Activision games on the original Atari. And I'm also going to have at the end here some honorable mentions and some other information for collectors. Let's take a look. Coming in at number 10 is Starmaster. Starmaster was Activision's answer to the game Star Raiders, which was a pretty popular game by Atari. You play as a fighter pilot who has to defend 4 star bases from enemy attacks. Now, the trick to this game is that you have very limited energy and everything seems to tap into that, including your laser weapons, your shields, and even your warp drive. Also, the game has a really neat galaxy map that you can access by using the color switch on your Atari 2600, which helps you plan out your routes. This is a pretty cool space combat game, and personally, I actually like it a lot more than Star Raiders. And, for the time, the graphics and the gameplay were pretty awesome. Coming in at number 9 is Spider Fighter. Spider Fighter is another game in a long line of, say, Space Invader or Galaxian clones. But with this one, like a lot of other Activision games, they take the original concept and they expand upon it. In this game, you play as a gardener who is protecting your fruit from invading spiders. Now, depending on what stage of spider you attack determines on how the battle will go. Now, there are a lot of these kind of games out there on many, many different systems, but honestly, this game comes up time and time again as one of the best of the genre. So if you're interested in checking these games out, give this one a shot. I mean, it's definitely challenging, it's colorful, and it's pretty awesome. Number 8 is Sequest. Sequest is a horizontal shooting game where you play as a submarine that is trying to rescue up to 6 divers while fending off all sorts of sea creatures and other subs. You need to do this before the sub runs out of air, which is indicated at the bottom. Now, you guys know that I love my shooters, and this is an awesome one. It's challenging and really fun. Coming in at number 7 is Pitfall 2: Lost Caverns. Now, you're probably asking yourself, wait, what about Pitfall 1? I mean, that's considered the classic. And it is, and I really like the original game, but I'll tell you what, Pitfall 2 improved almost everything about the original game. I mean, in some ways, they're almost 2 completely different games. The first game's very randomized, and the second game is very planned. What I mean by that is that in Pitfall 2, it actually has 27 levels that are stacked up and pre-made into this huge map. I mean, this game is massive, and this is something that was rarely seen on the lowly little Atari 2600 at the time. Coming in at number 6 is a game you don't often hear about called Pressure Cooker. Pressure Cooker is a really interesting mix of, say, gameplay from Burger Time and mix in a bit of Root Beer Tapper. You play Burger Chef, and your job is to assemble hamburgers according to the orders that come in. Some orders want extra onions or maybe just lettuce or cheese, and then once the burger is built, you need to take it down to the packaging room at the bottom of the screen and put it into the correct colored wrapping. This game is all about multitasking and gets crazy quick, but man, is it awesome. At number 5 is the racing game Duro. Duro was probably Activision's answer to some of the other racing games that were popular at the time, which would be like, I could say pole position, but like a lot of other Activision games, they took that concept and they added a bunch of stuff to it. And the big feature with this game is the different time of day and also the different environments that you have to drive through. The goal of the game is to simply pass a certain number of cars within a 24-hour period. And what's amazing about it is that you go through daytime, you go through snow, you go through night, there's also fog, there's dusk, there's dawn. It was just so cool at the time. Coming in at number 4 is Robot Tank. This game is very much like Battlezone, which was a really popular tank battling game in the arcades and also on the 2600, but Activision made it their own here. Instead of just one hit destroying your tank, in this game, you can take damage. For instance, you have radar, you can take damage in your treads, which will slow you down, or sometimes your entire vision will go out temporarily, or even your cannons where you won't be able to shoot. It's pretty cool. And also, like in Duro, this game features a 24-hour cycle, including daytime, nighttime, and even fog, which adds to the strategy required to win. At number 3 is Frostbite. Frostbite is a game I didn't own as a kid, and I hadn't really heard about it, so I don't know if it's a bit of a hidden gem or not, but man, this game is just awesome. Think of a mix of Frogger meets Q*bert. The goal of the game is to gather ice bricks by jumping onto them, and then you build your igloo, which is up at the top right-hand corner, before it gets too cold. Once a door appears, make your way to the igloo while avoiding falling into the freezing water to end the level. This is one of those games where the concept seems simple, but it's done to perfection. This is definitely one of the best Activision games. At number 2 is the awesome shooter River Raid. Oh man, what do I say about River Raid? I mean, this is still one of the best horizontal shooters ever made. This game is still really fun to play even today. Now, for those of you that don't know, the trick to this game is that you're constantly running out of fuel. So you're playing this game where you're trying to go for points, but you're also trying to get as far as you can without running out of fuel. And you can never touch the sides of the canyons. And that's what kind of makes this game so unique and so much fun. And also very challenging. It's also completely randomized. Just an excellent, excellent game. And the number 1 Activision game on Atari is Hero. Hero stands for Helicopter Emergency Rescue Operations. And this game is a platforming game unlike any other, especially on the Atari 2600. For one, this game came out relatively late in the 2600's lifespan, and so it really took advantage of the hardware. As a matter of fact, there are 20 different levels in this game, and those levels get more longer and complicated as the game progresses. This game can also be pretty challenging, requiring you to memorize the levels to beat them before your power runs out, which can be pretty tough when you get to the upper levels. Although I have to admit, I've never actually beaten this game. It's so tough, but I played every year. I just love it to death. It's still one of the greatest Atari games ever made. And there is my top 10 Activision games on the original Atari. I hope you enjoyed that. But before I get into honorable mentions, I want to give you some information for collectors out there. Specifically, if you go into, like, say, a pawn shop or a retro gaming store and you find an Activision cartridge, you may be surprised to see the label is often in terrible condition. And that's very, very common. As a matter of fact, most of mine are terrible looking. And it's because I think it's the glue that Activision used to hold down the label. For whatever reason, over time, that glue has broken down, mixed with the label. They just look terrible. So don't be surprised. It can be very common to just get, crappy looking cartridges, but at least the games still play and work just fine. The other thing is that, maybe you don't own an original Atari console and you're not interested in buying one. That's totally cool, because Activision released a really good anthology. This is the PlayStation 2 version here, and it includes 45 games, and it's a nice mix of really common ones and also pretty rare and obscure games. So it's a good starting point for a lot of people. Now, the emulation is not perfect, and almost all of that is because of modern joysticks. You just don't have the original Atari joystick to plug in. And so, for instance, you know, Hero is on that disc, and it plays okay, but it's way more difficult on that anthology to play. I'm actually way better at it using an actual controller or joystick. Also, Kaboom is on there, and again, it's really hard to play it on that anthology because you don't have the paddles. So just be aware of that. But most of the games are actually really cool and really fun. So, without further ado, let's check out the honorable mentions. And as always, I want to thank you for watching my channel and thank you for subscribing. Take care.